Hello everyone, welcome to a Doom review. And I'll try to do more of these Doomer reviews soon, as well as more updates on Arctic ice, because we're at like 5.23, I think, 27 million square kilometers left in the Arctic. And things are going to be really interesting if El Nino starts kicking in and we get a winter like the southern hemisphere is getting, with like 100-degree 38°C temperatures in their winter. If we get a winter like that, the Arctic might not really freeze for next year when El Nino is going to get super hot. So thanks for checking this out. Be sure to like this video and subscribe if you haven't to the channel. It's totally free. I know Jim Massa has a Patreon. It's like $3 or $5. If you want to contribute to that, do so as well. I'm not going to charge anything for my channel, but I do really appreciate the support. It does something to share the video more if you like it, or share it, or subscribe. So feel free to do that if it's not going to hurt you too much. And I'll see you guys next time. Make sure you're having a lovely day. Enjoying what time we have. Hello and welcome to the first update of February. We're going to start with something that should be on everyone in the climate aware and doomer community's minds: Antarctica. My last video, Antarctic extent, was 7th lowest at 6.17 million square kilometers about a month ago. Today is, as of yesterday, it's all the way down to 2.51 million kilometers squared. And if you can see by that chart, there's only 2 years lower. It's third lowest, and only by about 100,000. So there's a real possibility by the time I make another video that we could be record low. And lastly, the about section is here. Ever felt like compelled? Throw me $5. I do have one. Hope everybody enjoyed all the information. I'll do my best to link the sources as always. And oh, I did forget, shout out to Users of Climate Chaos for mentioning Arctic permafrost. I did look that up, and there's not terribly much information new coming out. It's just kind of like increases in methane data. But there's a lot, as thermal expansion increases and the sea continues to heat up and get wider, it's strengthening wave energy, which is eroding permafrost coastlines. And, you know, a quarter of the Earth is made of permafrost, and a lot of that's on coastlines that are eroding rapidly. So thank you once again, everybody.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Environmental Coffee House. I have a special guest tonight. I'm Sandy Shellis, and welcome Justin Leso, who I know from all of the different Facebook groups, but I'm going to let him tell you all about it. He's a musician, and he chronicles the collapse now on his new YouTube channel, or newer YouTube channel, besides playing in a band. And I called him, he's chronicling the collapse. I guess he's the new generation of collapse chroniclers, like Sam Mitchell from Collapse Chronicles. And I'm going to let you take it away and tell me your version of it. So welcome to Environmental Coffee House, Justin.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you so much for having me here. Hopefully the connection's good. You can hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
There might be a little bit of a lag, like between what I'm saying, you know. With
Don't
the screen,
worry.
But we'll deal with it, yeah.
Everybody knows live. This is live. That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So tell us first thing I want to know, okay, is you're a musician, you're a young guy. How did you fall down this rabbit hole?
So if I could pinpoint a first, I was always kind of interested in the general, what you would call like environmentalism. You know, the stuff that they teach you when you're younger, like recycling, taking care of trees, stuff like that. And then I got into more of like studying sociology and anthropology in college. and that led me towards ecology, which is way more focused on the relationship between like humans and like the soil around us and different plants and animals. So I started learning. Like one rabbit hole kept leading down to another. Like I learned about strip mining in different countries and deforestation, just these kind of pinpoints. And sociology is good at looking at the bigger picture and studying groups and studying multiple things at one time and kind of connecting how they interlink and or how they coexist. And to me, I kept seeing all these like pinpoints of things that weren't good for the environment, and I was just like, well, this connected system is gonna have like a fatal toll on it at some point. And by the time I got out of college, I was segued into like kind of where
Wow.
we are now in the conversation.
You saw it. You knew it. So tell me, as a musician, and of course I'm going to ask you how long you've been a musician, but weave that in with how does it affect your music to be collapse aware?
Okay, so my background, like as a musician, I came from like a really musical family. Like my uncle and dad specifically, definitely were really big music, and my dad is too. He plays piano, so he got. I was always like exposed to it because
Great.
my family had gigs and stuff all the time. Like you mentioned in your conversation with Brett, having like exposure, to it in your like family life and stuff. So that was a really big starting off point into getting me like interested into what I'm interested now musically. And then when you tie it into collapse, I think so. I got into the music I listened to before I found out about, like the collapse stuff. But now that I kind of started finding ways to tie the two together because there's all these different like metal bands who have songs about like the planet getting messed up or like humans choking off resources. And I didn't really listen to the lyrics as much as like the music because I'm more the
Yeah.
music guy. And
Yeah.
now I listen to the lyrics, I'm like, holy crap! Like a lot of bands I like have at least one song
A
about
message.
like a collapse solution. And I think that's so fascinating.
A
And now,
message.
yeah, I kind of I don't have entire like agency over like the lyrics of my band, but my vocalist even today we kind of orient some of our lyrics on like kind of dealing with the different, not only like the subject itself, but the emotional tolls it takes in terms of like anxiety and different emotions. And I'll talk more about my band later on, but
Hmm.
we have a song we're working on right now for this year. It's called Doom Speak. And I'm so interested in what the lyrics are going to be because like I don't even know all of them yet.
Wow. So doom speak. So the lyrics, I mean, obviously it's not exactly like the days where you could just write songs that are like zippity dude. I mean, it at least once you become aware of what's going on, you know, do you guys sit together and talk about it in the band? Do you talk about what's happening?
So I kind of have to tread this line, so to speak, where I'm almost like overly conscious of how it's going to affect my friends because I'm a
Right.
young person and I know how it affected me when it
Mhm.
first like first quote unquote wave on the beach of collapse hits you. It's like it's like being on the beach and being asleep and a wave rushes. It's the same kind of,
Tsunami.
yeah, like so I know what that was like for me. So I try to kind of test the waters with people before I just you know but even in my band that kind of talks about it but kind of doesn't, we'll show up at practice. And even recently in the winter and the fall, and I remember everyone was wearing shorts and we were joking about, oh, it's a nice spring day. Like it comes up in like, we kind of like put it up in this kind of water cooler talk almost. And that's the way it's palatable. It's more palatable to people my age when you like, oh, I was working at this job in November and it was 70 something degrees and it happened to be the record for our area that day. And I didn't know that, but it was like, oh, it's just another 80-degree November day. And
Wow.
people around me my age are like, yeah, this is so cool. Like, I'll have to enjoy it now. Like, making jokes like that because even the people that don't get it on some other existential level, they
They
get
get
like
it.
collapse. Even climate. Yeah, it's kind of weird.
So it's another level, but yet it cannot be just outwardly discussed like we all do it.
Yeah.
It's frightening for
Yeah.
somebody your age. It's frightening for somebody my age. And I know I've been taken to say, well, I'm of the generation we're dead men walking, and it's you guys that are going to head on deal with the things that we're seeing now. Even, what's happened in Chile. Horrible
Oh,
fires. California, mudslides, all the rich people, though, their houses are sliding off the Santa Monica hills. I'm not laughing at their just
well,
misfortune.
no, I know. I will say thank you, Sandy, for just bringing up Chile. Like that's like in the week we're in now, and I saw the pictures and I was like, this looks exactly like Lahaina, and it looks
Hmm.
exactly like paradise, and it's like we're seeing the same things
Hmm.
over and over on a like quickly increasing magnitude scale, and it's like, oh, I'm glad I'm not the only person kind of wide-eyed looking at this. Like, oh wow,
Yeah, and you're not. There's a lot of us. I mean, but there is the little group on Twitter. There's the groups in Facebook. It's not the overwhelming, well, normies that look at this because it's too much for people. Or there's, the people that definitely think technology is going to solve everything and the word solution and all. And well, I want to ask you, how do you feel about that?
well, for me, I look at my background in how things like like globalization itself plays such a big role in what we would call solutions. So it's all reliant on a certain system that in itself is destructive. Like it, I try not to even talk about it too much because I don't like being the person that has to think about, like, I want to work on being a little bit more positive. I'm the person that's like, oh well, we have to look at this wrong and this wrong. Like I guess I had so many engineering friends that I'm about a little bit of engineering brain that way, where I have to like, all right, well, this problem could arise, this problem could arise. So for me, it's harder. That I, that's a long-winded way of saying it's harder for me to see certain solutions phasing out as long, like the longer we go on with each bullet point of, oh, this crazy weather event happened. Oh, now this one 2 days later, California got two atmospheric rivers in the same week, which is a phenomenon that's not really even supposed to happen regularly. Like,
No, no, it's not. So being that you see it this way, um, and you have this well knowledge. I mean, you're in these groups. These are collapse groups. In fact, I wanted to ask you that question. Did you say that already? How you talked about the collapse chronicle that you
oh, I don't
read?
think so. Well, we did.
Yeah.
So, my my Twitter is like kind of more geared entirely towards like the stuff you're talking about. It's just like a little community, like less than 200 people, and I think the bio is just like chronicling the collapse and something about my bands. And that was kind of a play on the collapse chronicle that I believe the dude's name is David Ferraro writes. He
Mm-hmm.
writes like a
Yes,
newsletter. He compiles like a list of kind of collapse oriented,
I saw it
like,
today.
yeah. And it'll put it'll I like that it'll just get posted in random different corners. So even if I missed it in the morning, like I'll be checking stuff and it'll just pop up 3 days later. Because the algorithms today are so, they're messed up, and I think it's on purpose. It's like somebody went around knocking all the papers off the desk. So you have to dig through them to find,
That's a good
like, your
analogy.
website.
Yeah, we've had a Facebook page forever and 19,000 followers. And Jonathan O programs and does, I mean, he takes you everywhere around the world. It's not just collapse oriented, it's everything oriented. And, we'll get 6, 7 people that respond to an article, and he puts a lot into it. So it is algorithms. How much marketing can I do? I don't want to. I mean,
Right.
if 19,000 people want to ignore it, oh well. And there's a group too. What are your favorite groups on Facebook?
So I'm a big fan of Arctic News.
Yeah.
There's a there's a group called, it's the acronym spelled out, the NTHE acronym. I
Yes,
don't know.
that's.
Yeah, it's just
Oh,
like,
that was the first group I found that was oriented this way. Was that one of the first? It's been around for a long time.
yeah. And I don't know if you were talking more public or private groups, because there's also like kind of private groups that people set up. I know, I think Nature Bats Last is private.
Hmm.
There's a couple other places like that.
Yeah, our group, our environmental
Like
coffee house group,
yeah.
that's private.
There's a couple pages on like the melting of Greenland, like
Mhm.
Arctic and Antarctic sea ice. I'm
We're
really
in. We're all
interested.
in the same. We're in the same groups. Isn't that
Yeah,
amazing? We know we're in
I
the.
figured that you were
Yeah,
asking.
all the same groups. But I saw that collapse chronicle today, and there's a lot of people. And then on Twitter or X, there is, we call it, I guess, climate X, because every day people are posting. There's Lyle Lewis, who I'm going to interview, who just wrote a book about extinction. He's a
Oh,
biologist, ecologist.
racing to extinction.
Yes.
I've heard a lot about that. It's on
Yeah.
my it's in my like cart, so to speak, to
I
get
just
that.
ordered it because I'm going to interview him. I talked to him about it. I highlighted him in my last video from Friday night. But these people, do you ever feel though that you're looking at all this stuff? How do you deal with looking at it? You're overwhelmed. I mean, how do you feel?
Yeah. Um, well, you've heard the term overstimulated before. I'm
Hmm.
sure that's a great way to feel. It kind of requires more effort in the coping and grief sector of like my like emotional balance. So, I'll read enough and then be like, all right, I gotta go do something, mindless, like run around or play a video game or work on music. Like it kind of pushes you to like, all right, you start to recognize your body's limit of how much of a dose you can take at one time. I just find that my quote unquote tolerance, like my dosage of it, take like ability is like really high. Like I can go through a lot of data, a lot of articles before I need to take a break. And that's kind of why I feel like I've been
Yeah.
doing like my channel and stuff, because I feel like there's too much to talk about.
Well, I'd like to see you come on here with Brett.
Yeah, I would love that.
I
Your
would love
episode with
it.
him recently was great. I think there was a lot of parallels in our
Yeah. I think the
both
two
our
of you.
climate and music
Yeah,
trajectories. Like,
your own show. I'll produce it. Let me do it. And I mean, why not? Why not? The sky's the limit,
I mean, if
baby.
he says yes to that episode, this is me saying I'll do that episode.
Yeah.
I'll
We'll
do
do
that
the
right now.
episode and see how it goes. But I would like to help you also, have people come to your channel. I What you're doing, it's like what we used to do, Jennifer and I. And it's so exciting to see you talking about the Arctic ice and talking about the Antarctic ice and learning. It's watching you unfold and bloom. So it's not all negative. There's a big positive because
Yeah.
it's watching you learn and then talk about what you're learning, and you're very articulate. So why
Well,
don't you
thank you.
talk a little bit about the science that you're
Yeah, I
learning?
can. And
Yeah.
I would. I definitely want to say thank you for like inviting me to do this, because I wanted to focus more on the positives, because I'm pretty well versed on the negatives right now. Like
We all are in this
in my
group.
sleep. Like
Yeah.
so the positives would help me, if that can help me distribute the information without the emotional attachment better, I'm all for that. So, did you want to talk about science wise, like how I got into all of this, or
Yeah,
just what's
and what's your area? Do you think that once you get it, yeah, what's your area of expertise? Like Jennifer's Arctic ice. You know, I'm a social scientist. I look at all the social aspects of all of this. What's yours?
yeah, so if I were to say expertise, my only like real qualification is that I have a bachelor's degree in sociology. So if we were
Okay.
talking about like qualifications, like I've had experience like counseling outside of like climate stuff. Just I've counseled youth in an inner city program for a few years, and I had an experience like helping people process, like teenagers that had a friend like shot and killed. Like I had to try to
Ooh,
talk to them. So like really tough,
that
traumatic.
is tough.
Like I feel like stressful situations like that, I kind of get into this lockdown mode where I like prioritize helping. So I think building that skill was really useful.
Wow.
And I'm sorry about the tangent. I forgot where we were. We
No,
were
we're going to
going.
go into the science, but you're talking about your
Yes.
background and you're a helper. You're a helper bee. That's a
Yeah. I
good
don't always think
thing.
about I don't think about myself as one, but looking back on some of the stuff I did, it's kind of how I want to be. So,
And
but
that's a good, positive goal. Yeah.
sorry. Yeah. Say that one more time.
It's a positive goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, there are positives, especially when it goes to helping people and helping others, giving of yourself. So, what would you like to accomplish with your science and learning and channel? And what would you like to accomplish?
So I'm sure you've seen on social media before the kind of trope people throw around that don't necessarily agree with the science about how quote unquote doomers are people that do nothing.
Right.
And I think if I wanted to accomplish anything, given the time scale a lot of scientists are throwing at us, be it the shorter one or the longer one, if I wanted to accomplish something, it would be to say that actively working to educate people. Like I feel like there's kind of like a chain of there's citizen scientists, there's scientists working at this information, and then there's stuff in that peer reviewed research that is hard to break down. And like me personally, I don't know all of it, but as I've been kind of growing and learning with my own experience and doing like reading research papers for sociology and having to write term papers, I know how a little bit how to navigate that
Hmm.
kind of literature. So I try to explain it in a way like some of my friends that work at these menial retail jobs I have that actually repost Arctic news on social media, which I think is
Yeah.
so cool. Like people that work
Right.
at like gas stations and stuff know about this, and I know them, and I because I see them reposting. I feel like what I'm doing is to kind of build the understanding of people like that, like people that don't know where to go when they see the science, like help bridge those kind of connections on like a very general level.
That's very commendable. And so we're going to help you do it. I hope. I hope. Build that
Well,
channel
I
up.
think we already have.
Aw. Well, we'll build that channel up, and then we'll have that show with Brett because it. I think it's important also, and you don't come off as a terrifying communicator, and that's good. You come off as a nice, an even communicator where I think people can identify and relate, especially younger people. It's important. But older people can identify with you because they went through what you are now, you know? And some people have been, I mean, in our audience, have probably been aware of this since the 1980s, all the things that are happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would you like to see happen for
What I
that?
like to see.
Yeah, for I mean with your career, your channel, your music, what would you like what do you see for I mean, you know how some people say, "Well, how do you see your next 5 years?" And other people
Okay.
say, "Well, we're going to go extinct in 5 years." Well, we're not, Let's talk about that.
Yeah. I would the next 5 years. Hopefully, it's not like all wildfires and crazy stuff. What I
Mm.
like so I like what we're doing with the channel is really great. I kind of like I'm trying to kind of keep a healthy balance between reporting a bit on the collapse and climate disasters and doing stuff with the Acrolein, like my band,
Ah.
and kind of speaking. It's kind of both expression of art and therapy to me because like playing metal for me is a way to get out a lot of the stressors, even just not even just climate collapse, just everyday stuff. And then there's the bonus of being able to write music that other people like. I listened to your conversation with Brett, and a lot of the bands he was talking about, I know, and it's funny because he mentioned like he was like talking about bands nobody knows, like Heavy, Heavy, Low, Low. And I was like, yeah, dude, that's probably like, you probably know the band Duck, Duck, Goose and like bands nobody's ever heard of. And I thought
Except
that
my
was really cool.
daughter. She probably knows them
Yeah.
all. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's cool. Um, I want to put this up. Elliot Jacobson is projecting a halving of the current global human population by 2050s to 2060s. Now, you know who Elliot is, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of
Okay.
those.
So,
Right.
so when you hear something like this, you read something like that, what does it
Uh,
elicit in you? What kind of response?
to me, so I take the same approach kind of I did when I first got exposed to this kind of stuff. I'll hear something like I remember when I first heard about collapse by 2050 even, and I had to like replay the sentence a few times in my head because I doubted it initially. Like my own like subconscious bias doubted it immediately, and then I had to go through this process of, well, that could be possible. Well, this could be possible. And one of the things I like about people that are climate aware, but also have kind of, I don't want to say like a geopolitical savvy, but kind of an understanding of how the current geopolitical like atmosphere has ushered in what we're currently dealing with like
Mm-hmm.
directly. And I feel like it's important to kind of, you know, look at the different cracks in the facade where they're most apparent,
Yeah.
because that's a great indicator of. And I'm talking directly about the 2050 2060 thing here, because when people say, when you think of half of a population, you don't, like, most people would think it's just climate change, but like a lot of that is wars that were brought about by water scarcity or food shortages, and that would cause a halving of the population a lot faster than climate change even would.
Do you see a nuclear war
So
on
when
the
I see stuff like,
horizon?
for me, I think nuclear war isn't going to happen because the players involved know that it's just gonna be the, like, the, you've, before my time there was the uh, acronym MAD, like
Yeah.
mutually assured destruction.
Yeah.
I feel like we're like magnitude 100 mutually assured destruction. Like, we got satellites and that could probably, you know capable of firing things like that. And I think all the players involved are just doing their little proxy involvements over resources because they know that's not going to completely implode the planet the way nukes would.
Makes sense. You think they're
Yeah,
so
it's
the psychopaths in charge are not that psychopathic? They ain't gonna
well,
press
it's like
that button.
well, my philosophy is, what's more psychopathic, like prolonging the suffering indefinite, like continuing to like pick more groups to inflict the suffering on over a longer period of time. Like, I feel like that's scary to me as a young person, because like I feel like I grew up in the 90s and the 2000s in a very tumultuous time period in America. Like, I was in second or third grade in 2001 when I got sent over, and everybody my age can tell you about what that did in terms of impacting young people. So just to go from that, and then I heard Brett mention Fukushima, which was something really
Hmm.
impactful to me as a young person. Just seeing the tsunami in class in high school senior year, I remember that, just being kind of awestruck that like a something like a movie scene was happening on the television in front of me in school. I I, this is kind of a quick aside, but you've seen the movie The Day After Tomorrow,
Oh yeah.
I'm sure, right? That was like one of my favorite movies as a kid because I always used to want to be like a storm chaser, even before
Really?
climate collapse. I loved, which is ironic because a tornado hit my area like a couple years ago in August.
Oh, welcome to the club. Me too. And you're in Jersey. You know, you don't think of New
Well,
Jersey as having tornadoes. And
I
I don't.
I didn't want to say there was like 30 points that you talked to Brett about that we could have furthered into our conversation, because you guys talked about Tornado Alley,
Yeah, yeah.
and there's papers out about how it's shifting north and east. And
Yeah.
there's actually two parts of Tornado Alley. There's a bottom part called Dixie Alley, which is like where a lot of the more lethal, dangerous, like the Alabama area, and that's also moving east. So I'm kind of like in Tornado Alley now, living in New Jersey, and I've been to. I was at a museum in Delaware with my partner, and we were like, "Oh, are you landscaping?" Because there was all these trees down in the back, and they were like, "No, a tornado blew through here, and we haven't finished cleaning because there were all these trees down, like dozens of trees, like giant trees." So they happen now in Delaware and Pennsylvania and New Jersey. It's just a tornado spot now.
It's scary. I never thought there would be one here either in Western New York. And I mean, it took my beautiful maples, a lot of trees. It was a scary thing. So I mean, you just don't think of Jersey as that happening. And what
Right.
you know? Do you know Bella Lugrisi? Bella, everybody knows Bella. Do you know
You
Bella?
might.
He used to
You
call
might be.
himself Osama number five. Now he's Bella
Okay.
Lugrisi. Okay, he was just saying
The
Jersey.
name that name sounds familiar.
What exit? That's the
Um,
that's the joke, you know. Come on, you're from
South
Jersey.
Park. Like
Oh,
four.
well, he
Well,
wasn't real.
well,
Don't
I'm from
dox
the south part.
yourself.
We take a highway that's not even the turnpike because we're the
Are you
more
near
rural.
Absecon down that
That's
way?
by the shore. Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
that's where my stepdaughter grew up.
For New
South
Jersey,
Jersey.
near is anywhere in like a half hour to an hour is near in South Jersey because you got to
Okay.
take a drive. But yeah, I know what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
And a lot of people don't know about New Jersey, how beautiful it is down there in the Pine Barrens. And I
Hmm.
remember getting in a fight. I wasn't directly because I didn't live down there against a pipeline that they wanted to put through the Pine Barrens. Do you remember that?
No, that might have been before my time.
Okay, it was about 8 years ago. And it was when it
Oh,
was about the same time that Standing Rock was happening. It was about the same time
okay.
that they wanted to put the northern access where I live. So, destroying the Pine Barrens just wasn't something that was palatable to me or a lot of people. I don't know. I don't think they built it, but I don't know. Maybe somebody in the audience might know. I don't know. I
I'm gonna
don't
make a
know.
note to look that up tonight because
Yeah,
that's
do
cool.
that.
I didn't know about that.
Oh, I
I
like it.
know that they've been catching on fire.
Oh,
We
in
had
the
a
Pine Barrens?
we had a wildfire a couple years ago that was like 15,000 acres,
Oh, yes, I read about that. That was
which
scary
is
and
like,
sad.
that doesn't sound like a lot when you hear about how much California is burning, but for a very small state like New Jersey,
Hmm.
that was like our entire year's worth of acreage in one event. And
Wow.
you'll see, yeah,
How did it start? Dry?
uh, I think it was lightning.
It was lightning. But it wouldn't
Could have
have
been lightning.
happened if the conditions weren't ripe.
Yeah. Yeah. There's been a lot of drought too.
Yeah. A lot of people want to blame the Canadian wildfires on arsonists. While there might have been arsonists, the conditions were ripe for the arsonists to start fires that became catastrophic. So,
Yeah.
but I think that when perhaps the arsonists out there, either they are deniers, they're criminals, they want to make a point. I don't know. I really don't know. And that's a show I haven't done yet. The mind of an arsonist in the era
Well,
of collapse.
I
Oh
feel like
boy.
the 2023 Canadian wildfire season could be a show in itself. It could be a documentary in itself. It was like the data on it. It's so far beyond so many metrics. Like I remember when I first got introduced to collapse was when California was like really burning like paradise. You know, 2000,
Okay.
I believe 17, 18, 19. A lot of those years, it was like in a row. And I worked across the river from Philadelphia to the point where you can see the skyline. And
Uh,
I remember driving to work and not being able to really see the buildings because there was such a bad haze. And this was, you get haze with the summer from pollution, but the wildfire smoke mixes with the pollution that's already there and just doubles it basically. And that's why it's harder to see. And like how New York got orange skies last year.
Yeah, it was here.
So
It's horrible.
yeah, it was. I was working outside for 2023 summer and wearing a mask certain days because you had to. Like it was harder to breathe working outside, and it's just like
Gardening too.
that event in itself. And I, not everybody, but a lot of the people involved in just kind of the surface level climate action kind of have already forgotten about how severe that event in itself was. I think about the fact that there's like a 10-year lag on CO2. So
Yeah.
we're really technically only seeing the brunt of the 2013 wildfire season right now, or the 2014. So we're not going to feel the total heat from all that carbon dioxide that was released last year till 10 years from now. And we could already have 50 other things on top of that heating us. But
So the numbers came out, and at Mauna Loa, what is it, 428? They've
oh,
gone
really?
up significantly. So does that mean these wildfires from last year are baked in, and that the parts per million of, oh my gosh, it's going
Well,
to
how long
push
ago?
it's going to push 500 in
I
a
feel like it was a couple months ago. I was making jokes about how the parts per million is 420,
I think it went
and
up. I didn't pull it
now it's
up.
not.
Well, I could try to pull it up, but I didn't bring it up.
Yeah, the
Let's see.
bandwidth.
Mauna Loa. I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it. Let's just talk in hell with the graphics and everything. It's just that Jim
Yeah,
McHenry. Do you know Jim McHenry, right? Do you watch him?
yeah,
Follow
I've
him?
heard of
Yeah,
it.
he sent it to me today. Well, actually, I could pull it up if I don't want to mess up the whole thing. I will. I'll pull it up and we'll read it.
Okay.
Jim McHenry, Mauna Loa, and it is. Yes, this is who I want to. Well, it's really not being helpful. The minute I want to do this fast.
Okay.
I've had him as a guest. He's an amazing researcher too. He is, but he's angry. He's angry at all the powers that be. And who wouldn't be, you know? Okay. This is a chart since 1940,
Hmm.
and I wish I could show you guys, but I don't. Oh, daily CO2. February 5th, 2023 was 420. Now, wait a minute. He says February, it was unavailable. So but I saw the numbers and they were up to over 428. I know it. So it's gone
Wow.
up quite a bit in a year. In a year. So if you're
Yeah. And
saying
I don't know.
that we have a lag, explain that a little more.
So it's just from what I've heard from over different presentations. Like Professor McPherson has had a couple lectures
Mm-hmm.
a while back talking about how there's a lag from CO2 emissions
Mm-hmm.
that it can take up to 2 to 10 years to have the full effect of those CO2 emissions. Like, for example, every country that burned and polluted from last year, that net emissions, it won't fully disperse through the ocean currents and the different levels of the atmosphere for a full 2 to 10 years.
That's okay. So okay. All right. So I don't even know what to say about that. So things that happen today, we ain't seen nothing yet, really.
That's kind of why I always got nervous about, like, in 2018 or 2019 when there were California fires. So like, oh, this is going to be bad for 2029. And when I was seeing, hypothetically speaking, and I was seeing last year's Canadian wildfires, and I was like, well, this is going to be disastrous for what would be the year 2033.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
it
then,
makes sense. Makes sense.
yeah,
So what do we do? Are you a prepper
I
at
think
all?
I was a bit during the pandemic.
Hmm.
I got a bit of things together, and now I see myself as more of a just informer
Okay.
than a prepper. But
Okay.
I mean, I've done a little bit. I mean, kind of, and more so in terms of like, those scout survival manual stuff, like just kind of reading about what different things you would like to forage for if you found yourself in a new environment, like ways to check for stuff like that. So that's what I would consider my like survival prepping.
Is the area where you are conducive for an off-grid situation, or even making it through some kind of catastrophic? And what would be the catastrophic event that would happen where you are?
Well, there could be any number. I think if there was some sort of breakdown of the resources to get food and water, that there is local food and water where I live. It would just
Hmm.
be a matter of continuing to produce. Like if a drought came that wiped out the ability to grow crops locally, and there was also a disruption in the food and water supply on top of that, that would be something that would be really disastrous for where I live.
Singing Way says the CO2. I don't know if you know Karen. She does training for. She works in the library. She does the En-ROADS training. She did it on our
Okay.
channel. It's slower warming but longer persistence in the atmosphere. Methane is faster warming but less persistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's into this stuff every day. And she's another one who's a light, a shining beacon of light because she works with children. And she's got a new channel also. So uh, um,
What
I
was the
was
name again? I'm gonna write that down too.
climate. Oh, put your channel in there, Karen. It's climate. Oh my gosh, there's so many channels. I have to remember hers. She is interviewing. Her last interview was spectacular with this a health PhD actually, who was so articulate about the crisis and knows everything, and also comes from Pakistan, so she knows the world. Really, really well. She'll put it in, and I'll put it up. I'll put it up. So, how
Okay.
about let me ask you about feedbacks. What do you know
Sure.
about the feedbacks that are happening in your science, learning?
So, from my understanding, there's a lot of them now. When I even when I so I guess I would start at when I was in college. When I was talking about ecology and all that stuff, I got really interested in a topic that a lot of people nowadays don't really talk about that much. But it was my introduction to the demosphere. Really, it was like the sea level rise, because not because of it affecting you or me, but because it affects small island nations like Vanuatu and Kiribati and Tuvalu in the Pacific Ocean. Like, as somebody who studied anthropology in Easter Island and that kind of stuff, I was interested in those areas, and that's how I found out about sea level rise and how it's causing them to have to be climate migrants right now. And I stumbled upon, and this was when I was like 20 something, I want to say 23. I watched like this Netflix special. I think it was called like Bill Nye's Climate Meltdown or something like that. Something innocuous but informative.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of my first exposures to Guy Pearson, and that's when I started like really researching like Sam Carana's work and a couple other people. And I found out about the podcast. There was a podcast called Nature Bats Last
Mm-hmm.
that I did with
Which many of
Kevin.
us are veterans. Kevin Hester's been
Yeah,
my guest.
yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
we're
yes,
good
Kevin
friends.
Hester. Um, so that was actually my introduction to Jim Ass's work. Like I hadn't heard of him, and then he was on their show. And the second time he was on, I called in and asked him about you know the Blue Ocean event, because Jim would talk about how there's different qualities to ice that are really important. Like younger ice is more translucent.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
if the Arctic Ocean is predominantly ice that's only 1 or 2 years old, sunlight can still penetrate through it and heat up the water under it, which melts it from below. So stuff like that was like Jim Massa was the dude that really educated me on a lot of that stuff. And then I actually did a review of his channel on my YouTube channel, and I just went through like 100 of his videos and took notes and tried to get like a general synopsis, which was a pretty big undertaking. I didn't realize it at the
Oops,
time,
sorry.
and it's it was super informative to know that like the oceans are the main driver of a lot of the changes we're
Oh,
seeing.
yeah. Jim taught us so much. Jim and even Jennifer, Jennifer with her knowledge and ability to read graphs, and she used to do Extinction Radio. I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
remember Extinction Radio, but she did
Yeah,
all the work for that, and there's a lot of content that if you haven't seen, you'll it'll help you understand and trace the history from where we were and where we are. I'm sure you've come through a lot of it, but you're so new to this, and it's so at the same time, I feel happy that you're understanding and your age group and you're doing this, but then on the other side, I feel sad that it has to happen at all.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like this is my way of like fighting back against the potential realities. There's different tiers to them, obviously, depending on
Hmm.
you know whoever's projection, which one's worse and which one isn't, and they're all for young people. They're not like a lot of older climate scientists. Like I'm sure Paul Ehrlich, who is in his 90s now, is talking about climate change as this is going to be something to deal with for people that are younger than me because I'm 90. So
Yeah. But he was the one that talked about overpopulation, the little
yep.
fly on the wall nobody wants to talk about. Expound on that one, if you would.
Yeah, he was very, and he still tweets too because I follow him. I think that's so crazy at his age that he's tweeting. But so I like another thing I learned about in college was not even the carbon footprint, but just the consumption ratios, like how just even us Americans that are actively consuming less or working at
Hmm.
minimalist consumption rates,
Yeah.
even at that, we're still consuming the rate of like 30 Kenyans. That was
Oh,
a that was
we're
that was
sitting
the
here
metric in college I
electron.
was talking about.
Yes. So that was that a shock to understand
Yeah,
it?
and well, to me, it has everything to do with the overpopulation conversation because the the standard of living for X amount of people want the other, Y and Z amount of people want what percentage X has in terms of quality of living.
Hmm.
More. There are people that don't have cooking electricity and fuel
Right.
that want that quality of life, and
Right.
I totally understand that as somebody that's a, a quote unquote first worlder. I get that. So that I think plays entirely into the overpopulation conversation because if all of the billionaires and all of that had a long time ago worked on their consumption rates before even either of us even existed. They were millionaires, so if those people had worked on their consumption rates down the line, like the farther back you go, I feel like the less it would be a problem in the debate over population. But because we've gone so far and had so many people, and now we have this quality of life that other people are like, it's
Right.
like a feedback loop in itself that's gone too far.
8 billion. Do you think the carrying capacity of the earth can carry 8 billion or more?
Now, I think what we're seeing now in terms of different resource wars and the pandemic and what's to come out of the Arctic permafrost as it melts, I think it's already indicative of where we are in terms of carrying capacity.
Have you read
It's just like
Overshoot? Have you read it? Overshoot? William Catton's
by
Overshoot?
William Catton. No, I was going to say Bill Reese, but that's the wrong guy.
Well, you need to read
Um,
Overshoot. That'll be the Bible. If you're an ecological guy, so that's the next one. And if you don't want to
yeah.
read it, you can use it. Michael Dowd, he read the whole thing on audio, and so you can just go.
Oh,
It's
wow.
free. Yeah, it's free. Look it
Yeah,
up.
it was such a shame to lose Michael
Oh
because
yeah.
I had kind of wanted to talk to him at one point, and I just
Well,
didn't really want to be.
take
I wasn't this far along with
solace.
YouTube stuff yet. So
It's okay. I'm not a, well, I'm certainly not a religious person, but maybe a little spirituality. And I like to think that Michael's watching over those that he touched.
well,
We don't know.
as somebody that was raised religious and kind of like stepped back from that sphere, I liked the way he approached what he talked about
Hmm.
for people that didn't, involve themselves entirely in the religious sphere. Like
Right.
he spoke in a way that included people that didn't necessarily agree or support what he was trying to say. I just like that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of controversy around him, of course. People want to say he was a fossil fuel shill and he didn't like renewables, but those people didn't listen to the full message. The full message of post doom, no gloom, living life, understanding that, don't set yourself up for disappointment when you see that these things are not going to work. And maybe they are, we don't know. I don't prognosticate. I just cover them. My thing will be to cover all of the technology stories. Why not? We've got to learn about them. And your thing is going to be to cover the science that you're learning and unfold it for your peer group.
Yeah, and I do
Yeah.
like learning about, like you said, different wheelhouses, so to speak, from other people that are stronger in those perspectives.
That's lifelong learning. How about Paul Beckwith? Are you a Paul
So
Beckwith devotee?
when I started, like I said, it was 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my bachelor's degree like a few months after I learned about, near-term human extinction, and I was like, well, what am I going to do with my life now? in
What, now
the
that we're going to go
potential time,
extinct?
yeah, in the
2026?
various potential time frames I have, like
Yeah.
even if humans went extinct 200 years from now, which I don't think we have 200 years personally. So I just want to say that as a time frame, so we can like all together be like, okay, that's definitely not going to happen. Um,
Ugh.
to think about how things are going to degrade, like when we talked about geopolitics, we talked about everything else for 100 and 200 years is it's kind of striking to me, thinking how things have degraded since I learned what the acronym was in 2016, only like almost 8 years now. Like
Yeah.
it's like, wow, dude, like a hypothetical person born 10 years or 5 years from now is going to grow up in a world that is very, very
Very
different than
different.
I grew up in as a 90s kid. Like, it's not even like, yeah, technology. Like, you see people on Twitter, like, typing with their VR goggles and their
Oh
driving
my
car,
God.
thinking we have hope for humanity. But
How do you have hope for humanity when
I
somebody's
have hope,
driving
I
a
have hope for
self-driving car with one of those things on? Oh my gosh.
I have hope for the climate and doom community to
Yeah.
work out their nuances and stand together on certain things, because I
And
have to work out my own. That's like me being like, all right, I'm going to work on those nuances
and
too.
bring in the progressive community because I am a big progressive, and if I feel like it's not too late to be politically involved locally, and I don't know if you're involved in anything, but there's always something you can do to make your place where
Yeah,
you live a better place. And if there's
yeah.
if
Well, I know
there's
you saw. I know you probably saw like on my profile, like my old stuff, like when we used to march at all with the posters.
Yeah.
And I always look at that too because people are like, "Oh, you don't do it." Even if you're doing this channel YouTube stuff, you can still get a finger pointed at you about not doing anything. And I'll be like, "Well, I got the posters, I got the receipts from all my protests. I got the posters and stuff. Like
Well,
I
you had
was
the experience.
on
You lived
the
through
ground.
it.
So, yeah,
Me
and
too.
it's a tricky. Like you've heard of like XR before, right?
Absolutely.
It's a tricky slope. I think it's important just to talk about not just the climate when you're talking about action, right? So when you talk about XR, it's difficult to interpret their certain approaches they have as an American, because as an American, when you're aware of like the judicial system compared to
Mm-hmm.
like England or another place, the
Mm-hmm.
penalties are a lot steeper for anything. So you have to like be like shifty. You have to make your action initiatives in a way that they can actually help, and they're not going to just get you like locked up for something silly.
Right. Right. I see. Have you got feelings about the various genocides going on around the world? And I know I could particularly single out the one horrible one. I'm just wondering if you're um, seeing that as part of the collapse.
Oh, like the increase of wars, you mean?
Yeah, I mean we're seeing what's happening in Gaza right now.
Mhm.
We saw the Congo, we saw Syria, we saw
You know,
Zimbabwe. I mean, there's genocides happening. The Uyghurs. There's it's not
yes,
just Gaza. I mean, humanity has been doing this, and modern humanity hasn't stopped. Has
yeah.
not
And
stopped.
one book I really so as like from the sociology aspect, I always like hunting for those bookstores that sell college textbooks, like they resell them.
Hmm.
I was in Florida one time and I just bought a bunch of books from this resale place that was like basically all old FSU books,
Oh,
and one of them was called History of the Sudan, and I learned so much about Sudan, and it was before the civil war that split Sudan into two
yep.
countries, where now there's a South Sudan. So there was so much going on there before that even happened when I was a kid, and I remember that happening
Hmm.
because I always liked paying attention to other countries when I was a kid. Like back in the grade school
That's
geography, I
good.
was trying to learn about the capital. So and to learn now that the war in Sudan's like really bad. Like millions of people are displaced there. Not like not to say that anything, not to say that anything else isn't really horrific because it's all equally that you can't
Horrific.
compare two atrocities. Like
No. Does that give you, how does that make you feel about humanity when you see these injustices going on at your age?
it makes it makes me it kind of sharpens my thinking and approach to the 2050, 2060, half the population will be gone, because what I'm seeing is a concentration of power in the hands of so few individuals in a way that's we're kind of like uh, Mike Rupert always used to say, "Pass the popcorn."
Hmm.
We're kind of like an invisible hand that's like pushed us down into the movie seat, and then
Yeah.
another invisible hand that's like shoved the popcorn in our lap, so that we have to eat it, like to watch this horror show, and it's like it's just
Do you think, though, that there is a way to fight back? I mean,
yeah.
even
I
if
think
it's locally. Yeah.
I think information is a very powerful weapon, and not knowledge. I think those are very powerful weapons,
And
and
how do you
especially
convince the masses, though, that the information that you're talking about is right when everybody is brainwashed and thinks everything is fake and all that? This is what I'm
yeah,
wrestling with and researching.
mhm.
I did a thing on inoculation theory. How do you inoculate people against bullshit, basically?
Well, from my experience,
Hmm.
because there's 8 billion people, it almost feels like a kind of less of something that's worth the energy as opposed to just finding
Oh,
kind of it's the same thing people do in politics where people that are on the fence are easier to kind of, you know, make that distinction with
okay.
on any argument. So people that are interested in climate change and making a change or notice it in any way are going to be more receptive than somebody that's like an abject denier. So I feel like I've experienced, and even back in protesting things that have nothing to do with climate change, I've experienced arguments with people that just really refused to see any other side, and then I ran into them like an hour or two later, and they were like having a conversation. They were completely fine. But when it came to something like a
Hmm.
political or climate issue, they were like a totally different person. So it has a lot to do with the people, the individual person's cultural upbringing.
Absolutely. Sure, their worldview, I call it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's a lot. I mean, I don't like to say any negative generalizations, but there's a lot of really crappy worldviews that I've at least experienced
Yeah.
around and around me personally, locally. So it makes it difficult when you were kind of raised around, you know, my family had a couple crappy worldviews. I can say, like, full admission, and I had to unlearn them as I got older. And unlearning them and seeing other people haven't done that, it's hard.
It
But
is
it,
hard.
it makes it doesn't make sense to focus on a losing battle. You have to find like the different avenues that you can win people because those are the people that might actually be able to influence the change.
Oh, I like that. I like that. And influencing the change is not giving up, even if we know what the end result is. And influencing the change doesn't necessarily mean cheering on, you know, corporate hundreds and thousands of acres of solar panels. It means change in people's living, and change in trying to change little, like I said, local communities. I don't know if we could ever change the big picture. How do you feel about it? Like, what am I going too far asking you? Are you a progressive? Do you feel are you a person that follows politics, or is it just something for you that, I mean, you understand what's at stake now in the United States?
Yeah, well, the situation now is really depressing politically in the United States, and it's so polarized here that taking a critical look at what you believe and then looking at what other people aside for you believe, it's just like how is that divide narrowed? It's that's what depresses me about it because the discourse, if you've noticed in the last 10 years, is often mirrored in other countries when they kind of look
Yeah,
at the United States and they say, "Oh, well,
sure.
this is how. I mean, this is the world's hegemon, so to speak, and we want to aspire to those same successes." So when I look at
Yes.
American politics today, I think it's entirely a little bit of smoke and mirrors to kind of maintain that hegemony.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can pick candidate, and I do resonate with like progressive, but I almost find myself calling myself like one of those like people talk about the radical left or whatever. I mean, like jokingly, but some of my ideas, it's like well, you'd have to take really drastic measures to really make some of these changes you want to make to stop climate change. But in terms of politics, but to wrap up a kind of long tangent,
You're not on a
see like
tangent.
I see like a distinct like okay, so this might sound a little harsh, but I'll try to wrap it as nice as I can. As somebody who graduated college with kind of like a progressive mindset, I guess you would say. It's interesting to see a few years on how like things aren't as progressive as they would seem from
Right.
like the left. I feel like some of it is, and then when you get to other things that should be progressives, it's like, oh, well, why is that not? So that kind of disillusionment with me kind of made me even more nervous, because it's almost like the real change we could actually enact
Mm-hmm.
won't be, they won't make it to the point where you get to pick left or right, A or B. Like person
Right.
A or B is going to be somebody that upholds hegemony either way. Even if, we might not support their domestic policy, we might not support their foreign policy. Like we could, like, one person can agree or disagree on point A, which is foreign policy, which we could talk about for hours right now, and then
Yeah.
B, the other point, domestic policy, which on another hand you could talk about for hours right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as somebody on the left, and again, I don't like to stir too much stuff. I found it really interesting that we haven't heard over the last few years about, like, the immigration camps and stuff. Like, did they just all shut down? Like, I'm pretty sure
Right.
there's still, children getting treated terribly on the
Mm-hmm.
border, even with a quote unquote democratic administration. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's tough when you're basically picking like a shell projection hologram of what you really want in a candidate. Either way, like, even the people that are quote unquote, the bad polluters, like, they're still pick someone that's not going to support their interests, even if they think they are.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's like they're getting
Interesting.
duped either way. Even if they quote unquote win, they're getting duped, because that's already happened.
I
We saw
like
that.
your attitude because you're mellow about things and you don't rile up anger. You talk and you elicit thought. I like that. That's
Yeah.
very nice. It's a good
Well,
attribute.
I came from a place that I had to, like, force myself into that, because I consider myself angry, but I don't want to communicate that way. So I
What do
have to,
you
like,
do with it? What do you do with it
uh,
though?
I play death
Yeah,
metal.
death metal. There it is. I should have. I should.
I
Yeah.
just drum really fast and play guitar and
Yeah.
stuff.
There we
I put
go.
physical energy somewhere. Like, your intro was a show I went to in Maryland, and that was like the mosh pit.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, I wasn't going to be in the mosh pit filming, but when I wasn't filming, I was in the mosh pit, like,
Yeah, that was your
in
music.
that crowd of people bouncing around, because you need to kind of live, like,
Hey, listen.
this
If I
kind of
could go in
news
a
and stuff.
mosh pit, I would.
And I'm quote unquote getting old to be moshing now. It's been like 10, 15 years.
Yeah, I
But
remember the kids moshing at 15. Yeah, but they could throw themselves around, but
if I wear I'm
uh,
gonna start wearing my knee and back brace to concerts. People are gonna look at me funny.
oh my gosh. Yeah, like me. And you're not like you're half my
I
age.
want to.
Oh gosh. Yes, I am the mother of the doomosphere. But anyway,
I like that. It's
I've
cool.
enjoyed this. Well, yeah, because I want to take you all under my wing and I want to promote you and help you guys grow and change and do the things that you want to do and communicate. It's your turn. And that's why I am very interested in all of the things, all of you. You are compelling, you're bright, and I think you have something to offer.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I do. So let's go to some questions. I first want to read the super chats because we got two. Thank you. It's always Nadia. She's amazing. Nadia says, what's Justin's view on the impending loss of such a large fraction of the human population? Also, Christophacism says, when the last tree is felled, Christ will come back. Do you have a viewpoint on the religious view? Because I certainly do, and I don't keep it back.
Huh. You said when the last trees. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
reading that
So
now.
when Justin's
That's
view, what is
really
Justin's view?
interesting.
Impending loss of such a large fraction of human population, and also Christofascism says when the last tree is felled, Christ will come back. What does that tell you?
Well, so let me ask you one question first, Sandy.
Hmm.
That'll help solidify my answer. What do you know about the, like, aerosol masking effect?
Oh, I know that the aerosol masking effect is a serious issue, and that I follow Leo Simmons, and I'm in a group with him. We have a
Yeah.
private group, and Jim's in that also, and
Yeah.
so is Kevin. And it is, since we the sulfur, the aerosols are have been cleaned out of the shipping industry. We have
Yeah.
lost at heating. We don't have the albedo to reflect, the sunlight back out that way, if I'm saying it right, but we've lost it. We've lost it, and the temperature did go up since we cleaned up the shipping fuels. Now that's not making me a shill for the fossil fuel industry. That's just saying
Right. Yeah.
fact,
No,
scientific fact. And Leon,
I don't think Leon is either. He's just
no,
doing diligent reporting.
yeah. Did you
So
see his?
I
Did you see his interview with Nate Hagens?
yes, I did
Oh
watch
my
that.
God, I watched it 3 times. Leon's going to come on with me. He's supposed to.
Oh, he is. Oh, you'll have to let me know
Yeah,
when you
but
do that.
bugging
'Cause
him
I'll-
enough. Yeah, he will. He just right now he says I
Um.
have children and family things, but he will.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. Get him out the way now.
Yeah, well, the
Um.
Canadian prepper asked him first, and I said, "Oh, well, he's got a
Uh,
huge channel, but you know what? To Leon, that's not what he's interested in." So I
yeah,
was,
I felt that same way. I did,
yeah,
my
he'll
last
come with
video, I
me.
was like, I'm not doing this because I think there's going to be like a million people checking you out. I
Right.
know and see social media meteorology people that don't focus on climate that have like a million views, and that's not like
Stupid shit has 1 million views. So let's
yeah,
get back
that's
to
not my
to answering the you asked me what I thought about aerosol masking. She asked about when the last tree is felled, how Christofascism is, it's all about dominion, that humans have dominion. So what is your what was your asking me for?
so I asked you about aerosol masking because having the population would contribute a significant reduction in aerosol masking, and that is supposedly one of the feedback loops that is going to increase warming like dramatically, which would be a feedback that in turn kills more people in heat waves, which like that you get the feedback mechanism part of that. Like it just keeps getting worse.
Do you think
So
it's going to be all those things that that lower the population, or is it going to be through empowerment of women not to have babies?
well, I think the access to birth control in poorer countries is restricted on purpose
Mm.
because we could
It,
have
it, it,
education in a lot of different places that would like in the more developed, the quote unquote more developed, I definitely put that in quotes, Western world. There's all this access to you know, birth control and contraception
right
for
now.
certain level, for certain classes of people. So
Mm.
the poorer class, not so much. Which I don't get me wrong, consider myself in. But with regards to the Christo-fascism stuff, I my exposure to religion growing up, I consider myself like a recovering Catholic. Um, and seeing, just learning about the Crusades and all that stuff, it wouldn't surprise me if people continued justifying things like resource wars in the name of religion, and it's
Mm.
just kind of a guise.
Mhm.
Like I didn't want to say um, that earlier because it's kind of controversial, but I think a lot of the conflicts we're seeing right now are under the guise of religion, but they're really resource wars.
Oh, sure. Did you read Jessica Wildfire's piece on the oil and gas that's off the Gaza coast? Yeah,
That's
of
that's what
course.
that's what I was thinking of when I said that.
So
It's
there's
like
in the
there's resources
geopolitical
at
realm.
stake, or not to sound too anti U.S. imperialism, but
Oh, go ahead.
the whole the whole
We
the
all
whole drone
are.
strike, the whole I say that kind of jokingly because it's some of the media I expose myself to
Yeah.
that are American,
Yeah.
um, talking about the drone strike and well, if we didn't need the oil and wheat in Syria, would there even be the people there to get drone strike? Like these are those kind of put your hands and shoulders up, like, gotcha. What are you gonna do? Questions, right? Like, would those Americans have died if we weren't like siphoning the oil and wheat? Would everyone cares that the Americans were killed? Well, it's our fault that they were killed, kind of. You know, like these are the tough questions that I try to politely pose to people because they're divisive, they're polarizing.
And they're the tough questions we need to talk about. Wireless Mike says there is no such reference about the last tree anywhere in the Bible. It's clear no man shall know the day or time. The Christo fascists are making shit up. Yeah. I like your avatar there, Mike, by the way. Don't panic. I don't think Justin's a panicker. I panic at times. No, I think, Justin, you're handling all this stuff really well.
Oh, thank you. I think so. You talked to Brett. That's another thing you talked to Brett about how you guys don't smoke as much of like, you know, the
Stuff that
flower
makes
going
you
around
paranoid.
these days. Well, that and then just kind of like really sedates you. I feel like I have the problem where it's like I do because it keeps me calm like this.
Okay.
Like I
Hey,
could just laugh
listen.
and be goofy about like the
Listen,
sun boiling
hon.
off the
Yeah.
Great
Nope.
Lake ice.
Nobody's judging you. I've been a weed. I've partaken in weed since a lot, 40 years. I mean, maybe even more. Who knows? But it's just for
Yeah,
me. It is.
well, I
It
appreciate that.
it makes me. Sometimes I get like like I do get panicky, like Brett said. But it also
Mhm.
makes me eat. I get the munchies.
Yeah,
It's
that's
terrible
makes me
for the
eat.
munchies. Oh my
For,
God.
for me, it kind of sets. I kind of have an ADHD brain, like the Tron cycles, like they just keep going in all these different directions, like the
Really?
laser cycles. And when I
Wow.
smoke, it doesn't stop them. It speeds them up, but it puts them in one direction. Like it's kind of how people have medication for ADHD. I I feel like weed does that for me. Like it helps me focus,
No, that's good. It
especially
helped me for years.
like playing music and practicing like kind of harder, technical metal and stuff. It just makes me focus. I don't know. I could be biased as as a long time smoker, but that's just been my perception.
Well, I say everybody that likes metal should find your stuff. I listened to it
Oh,
today
thank you.
and it's the kind of stuff my kid loves. So I'm sure that, and I've been around it because by virtue of the fact that I raised her and I was the band mom, like I said, to
Yeah,
Brett, all the kids played at my house. Um, I want everybody to go listen because it's very easy for older people to say, "Oh my God, it's noise. I don't like it." No, you have to listen to the intent, the words, the emotion. What's the feeling that's coming out of this music? It's a movement for a reason.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I would be content. I would be content with people saying they didn't like how it sounds, and then reading the lyrics. I sent them to a song that is quite doomer in vibes. Like if I was trying to convey, there's a metal. I could just think of one off the top of my head. There's a song by the band Black Tongue called "A Pale Procession," and it's about how like the planet is in a bad, perilous state, and we've laid it to waste and stuff like that. And those are the
Mm.
lyrics. But you can show that to somebody, and they can read it and say, "Okay, I get that. I get what you're coming across." Even
Right.
if the metal is like too overstimulating or uncomfortable for them. So I try to like at one point in time for a little bit I was like a DJ in college, so I always tried to like play to the room and like let people, I mean, still be true to myself but find things that people can enjoy. Like a very like extensive category of different kinds of metal. And I always show people the instrumental jazzy stuff that don't listen to metal because they can still enjoy it even though it's like still heavy and technical. I like it.
That's great. That's all right. Well, listen, let's go through a few more. We've been, oh my gosh, an hour and 19 minutes. That's
Yeah,
great.
very
This has
well.
been
Yeah,
such
sure.
I've really enjoyed this
It's been great. I
conversation.
really enjoyed this too. Thank you for having me.
Me too. Let's see. Dog Dude says that was a good explanation as how the herb affects your ADHD. That's what I experience. Gets me in one direction. Maybe, I don't know. They didn't have that when I was a kid. They didn't have any of those diagnoses, but I've self-medicated since I was 14. So obviously I had a problem. Uh,
Me
early,
since like 18, probably. Yeah.
early love. Happy Valentine's Day coming up. Are you the sweetest thing on the planet? Thank you, hon. That was very nice. All right. See, I have your music playing in the background. And
That's all.
let's see. Okay. Let's go storm chasing,
Yeah, I
Justin.
saw. I saw. I'll post that. We'll have to find a cell that we can both drive to or something because,
Yeah,
like
right.
I said, I live in South Jersey. We have only had in our state one recorded F3 tornado, and it happened in 2021, 2 miles from my parents' house, to the point that my dad has a camcorder video of the funnel cloud forming
Wow.
before it descended,
Have you
which I
published
need
it?
because it's no, it's on a camcorder, and he's got like four of them because he's like one of those
Oh, it's
old
old.
tech dad.
Yeah.
No,
Old.
it's like one of those 2000s video cameras, so it's
Yeah.
it's kind of old.
I had
Like,
one. I remember it.
yeah,
I had one.
but he has a video of this beast tornado forming in New Jersey.
Holy
Like,
crap.
like that's not something you would see.
Was he shocked?
And
Was he shocked?
but yeah, I mean, he was the funny thing is, so it's not really funny, but it flattened houses out here. Like there were houses where you could tell where the house was, and it's just bricks and like flatten them. And the governor of New Jersey showed up the next day to speak. Like it was a big climate change thing,
Ooh.
and
Who
the
was the
Weather Channel
governor?
was there. Still the governor, Phil Murphy.
Okay, it was Phil
He is
Murphy.
this Democratic guy, but he's like a Goldman Sachs banker. So
Yeah.
as a progressive, I like
Conservadem.
yeah, you blew no matter who. But it's like
Uh,
conservative is a great. I've never heard that. I'm going to use
hmm
that.
That's what they are.
Like
Conservadem.
I heard. I don't know. There's a guy I follow that said the current president is like a neocon, and I never thought about that because he's on the left and he's
Hmm.
a registered, you know.
It
But that's
doesn't
just some of these
matter.
people. It's not that.
Conservadem.
They
Yeah.
said they've been in 4 tornadoes. That's
Yeah,
insane.
it
That's
is.
terrifying.
It is. All right, I wanted to put up Tommyist. It is totally conceivable that nanoweapons, artificial life forms, and synthetic biology could be unleashed, leading to human extinction sooner than people think.
Nano weapons. Oh,
Yeah, Tommyist is in our
the
Discord.
future.
Brett wants you to join our Discord and come into the
Yeah, I
conversation.
joined.
Oh, okay.
I'm a Discord noob, and
Okay,
I
well, I
joined.
was.
And
I still don't know
I've been
anything.
learning. I've been learning the ropes.
Yeah,
Yeah, for a younger person, there's some aspects of tech that I'm still catching up on, but it's been evolving
yeah.
so fast since I was a kid with a Game Boy Color. Like it's been crazy to watch.
Well, it's easy to get in, and there's some, oh my gosh, the conversations in there. But Brett does a
Yeah,
lot of work in there, and he posts a lot of stuff, and a lot of stuff to make you think, you know. And we have a lot of different threads. I guess you call them threads or channels. We have the What is
mhm.
Conspiracy channel, but then we have our pet channel. It's a great. I think it's great,
Yeah.
and
Well,
I mean,
I
there's.
like. Yeah, that's what that's what's good about like the copening because you can't just have pages and pages of the Chile fire deaths which are still climbing and
No, we
because if you
talk
don't
to each other.
balance if you don't balance it you get depressed and stressed out and I've done that personally like I have literally been there. That's
There's
why
even a
I've been
live
searching
chat.
out
Yeah.
community and groups like especially like Doom Twitter. I love the little space of people that are
Peter Dines
like
and Elliot and yeah, the whole group. I know the whole group.
and then even on social media, what's his name? Peter Carter posts a lot of really
Oh
interesting
yeah,
stuff. That guy is interesting.
he had a new
Even
one
if you don't
today.
support everything they post, it's certain ones are like wow. Like some people don't necessarily agree with every one of Sam Carana's takes, but there's things they post about Arctic sea ice
Mm-hmm.
recently, and
Mm-hmm.
I've been really so I've always looked at the Arctic sea ice. I don't want to call myself an expert on it though. I'm more of like a obsessive observer than an expert.
Ah, I like that. That's
But
great.
thinking of it as our air conditioner that's breaking and just leaking fluid, leaking freon. It's crazy to think about how everything's happening, and the lack of sea ice recently over the last couple of years is
Mm-hmm.
directly linked to the extra tornado, the
Oh,
non-seasonal tornado increases. It's
yeah.
directly linked, like lack of sea ice is directly linked to the weakened jet stream, which causes. Now I know Jim's talk about how it's like -40 in Alaska, but
Right.
it's closer to freezing. It's like 28 Fahrenheit by Svalbard. That's and Svalbard is up there in the Arctic. And I saw people posting
Mm-hmm.
today about the Atlantic Ocean heat going up under the ice is basically stopping it from freezing in certain
Yeah, that's
spots, and that's what.
in the Antarctica. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Arctic too. And my
Yeah.
hair standing up a bit for
Yeah.
well, the Antarctic is still declining. The record low was last year, 1.96 million kilometers square. If I don't know if you knew about that, or
Mm.
1.95. Because nobody was talking about Antarctica. We almost got a quote unquote blue ocean event in Antarctica, and I never thought about. You hear about the Arctic getting a BOE, but you never hear about the Antarctic. And then when I did that whole deep dive on Jim Mass's channel, I really learned about how the Southern Ocean is like Jim says it's like the grand central station for all the ocean currents. So it's almost like the canary in the coal mine for the Arctic for the ocean currents, Antarctica. So we saw record
Mm-hmm.
warmth in the ocean at the end of 2022 in Antarctica. I learned that from Jim, and it's almost like a year later, it's now catching up to the Arctic with the lack of. So that
It's
just makes me super
crazy.
nervous for this summer because we're
Yeah.
10th lowest right now in the Arctic.
When I first met Jennifer and Torstein, and all Torstein does all the calculations on the Arctic, and we were convinced back then there was going to be a blue ocean event earlier, but geologic time is not like spatially in our brains how we think of time. And so, it could take a lot longer than what we're seeing. There's a lot of different scientists out there too. I watch all the university scientists. I watched one yesterday that was
Yeah,
doing Antarctica. I could send you the link. It's a good one. You'll
yeah.
want to
I'd
watch
love
that.
to
But
check that stuff out.
yeah, yeah.
And as a young person, it does me more good for us to get a couple years before collapse. It does my band a bit of good, but I'm trying to be like as present as I can with each and every year because I don't
Good.
know when the switch is to be like we have to wear gas masks because the fires are too toxic. Because I know the California fires, there was like certain toxic chemicals were made by the combination of what was burned, and it's like okay, well, how long till we're wearing fallout masks all the time? And like the video game Borderlands, if you've ever heard of, I think that looks like a lot of my future
Mm,
if I get to be like an
no.
old timer. So it'll be fun.
Oh, it'll be fun. All right. Well, everybody, I want to say thank you. I've really enjoyed this, but an hour and a half. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Um,
Yeah, thank
I
you.
want to have you back, but I want to produce it. I want to be in the background, and I would like you and Justin to just, I mean, you and Brett to just go at it and have an amazing conversation, and we'll advertise it, and we'll get everybody under 40 to come.
Yeah, I
No,
mean, if
well,
I don't know if Brett's still checking this out, but if he sees
he's
this,
here.
I'm definitely up to working something out
Okay, we'll
in the
set it up
future.
a few weeks, and I'll produce it and do everything I always do, because that's what I love to do. I really like to produce others, so we'll see. And by the way, guys, this Friday night I have Kelly from KMUD, Kelly Lincoln from KMUD in Humboldt, California, County. She's my co host this Friday night with Nicholas Humphrey, and we are going to be talking about what happened in California all week with the atmospheric river. And so, between the two of them, Nicholas, meteorologist, disaster planning, Kelly with her journalism, I'm going to also take a seat back and let them go at it together and discuss it. So it should be a good show. Jennifer will be back with me the following Friday. I have interviews coming up, guys. Things are they're moving and shaking. So we'll see. And thank you. And thank you, Scott. Thank you, Kim. Thank you to all my moderators. Jean. Thank you, Poppy, for coming. Looney Tunes, I love you. I'll see you tomorrow night on Left Past 10th. Is Looney Tunes is he moderates like 4 or 5 different channels, and he runs between different shows that might show concurrently. He's a wonderful human being. And tomorrow night is Looney Tunes 9000 Appreciation Night on the Letter Hack. So we all multi-stream it, and we just talk. Jake is here. Jake and I will be doing a show on his channel's called What You Can Do, and we're going to be doing a show on the Federal Register and how you can make comments when there are issues coming up and you don't want something, or you want something and you make comments. So we're going to do that. Lots of things, lots of good things. And join my channel because I do members only videos, and I think I'm going to start some members only chats, live streams, where I can really let go and the world can't see it. All right, let me give you the last word.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, Sandy. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat. Definitely love to do some more stuff in the future. And I appreciate the Perspective Environmental Coffee House to kind of bring people together under this umbrella of working towards kind of an understanding together of what we're facing. Even if our interpretations of it vary and what we're going to do about it varies a bit, at least we have like kind of like a group understanding of where we're at. I really like beautiful. That aspect of it.
That's really beautiful. Thank you. I look forward to it. All right, everybody. We do the peace out, baby. Peace out. And we're going to go out with Justin's head banging music. Yahoo! We are going to do it. Yeah.